Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Welcome back to Backlick Cinema, the podcast. As always, I'm your host, Zo, that's Z-O or Z-O, if you're outside of the U.S., taking a look back at the movies of yesteryear. This is bonus episode 21. Thank you for downloading and streaming. We really appreciate it. The reason we started this show was to strengthen the bond between my son Zach and me. We usually watch movies that I loved when I was growing up in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But today, me and Zach were privileged to go out and we saw a movie that's not even widely released yet. That movie is Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. So this movie is scheduled to be released on March 31st. But I guess with the deal with Adam, the ticketing app, and certain theaters, we are able to get to see it early. They had a special screening for today only at one of the theaters that was participating. So me and Zachary got a chance to go there and watch this movie early. So this is a unique opportunity for me to let you know what I thought of the movie before maybe a lot of people didn't get to see it yet. So, Dungeons and Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. About this movie, a man named Edgin, Master Thief, goes on a quest in a harrowing attempt to bring his murdered wife back to life and try to regain the love and trust of his estranged daughter. With his best friend, Holga, a barbarian, he is joined by a sorcerer, a shapeshifter, and a paladin. Edgin leads his comrades through dangerous territories filled with magic, strange creatures, and dragons. He is determined to negotiate any obstacle in order to make his family whole again and steal some coins and trinkets along the way. This movie stars Chris Pine as Edgin Darvis, Michelle Rodriguez as Holga Kilgore, Renee Jean Page as Zenk Yendar, Justice Smith as Simon Omar, Sophia Lillis as Doric, Hugh Grant as Forge Fitzwilliams, Chloe Coleman as Kira Darvis, and Daisy Head as Sophina. It was directed by John Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein. Together they've directed Game Night and Vacation. It was also written by Jonathan Francis Daly and Jonathan Goldstein, as well as Michael Gillio. Daly and Goldstein wrote the screenplay, and Michael Gillio wrote the screenplay and the story. The music is provided by Lorne Balfe, and he also composed music for Black Adam, which is a movie that we had talked about last year. So here are my spoiler-free impressions. Let me preface this by saying that I don't know a lot about Dungeons and Dragons. I never played the game. I was never into the lore. The closest I ever got to Dungeons and Dragons was that I watched the cartoon in the 80s, I think it was. And I loved that cartoon. I think it was only on for one season. And I still remember like the opening, there was like an opening speech that the Dungeon Master gave. And he would say, "Fear not, ranger, barbarian, magician, thief, cavalier, and acrobat." Those were the characters. Basically, in that cartoon, a bunch of kids decide to go on a roller coaster ride. And as they go through the roller coaster into the tunnel, it starts to transform. Was it a roller coaster? Probably not a roller coaster. Maybe it was a canoe ride. Anyway, it was an amusement park ride. And they go through this tunnel. And as they go through the tunnel, it starts to change and they end up in a magical land. And as soon as they end up there, they're immediately attacked by, I don't know, some dangerous bad guy or monsters or something. But as they're running away and fending themselves off from these creatures, a little man appears and he is the dungeon master and he starts firing magical bolts at these kids and transforming them. So one of them transforms to a ranger and the other transformed to a barbarian and another, and on, like I said. And this is all in the opening credits. And So the gist of the show is that these kids are trapped in this magical realm, and they're on a quest to try to get back home. So that was my experience. I had another experience with an attempt to make a Dungeon and Dragon movie. So I remember the movie starred Jeremy Irons and Marlon Wayans, and it was not a good movie. It was disappointing, and because that movie was so disappointing, it came out 23 years ago. I was thinking that them making another attempt at Dungeons and Dragons would not go well if they tried it at all. And the funny thing about it is, you would think that it was so easy to adapt. It's just a fantasy movie. You got some heroes, you got some dragons, you got some knights, you got some wizards, you got some bad guys. You just, build a story around that. It can't be that hard, but apparently it can be very hard. But this current movie that I'm talking about, the one that's out now, the one that I just saw, it seems to have cracked the code. So what I hear about this movie, or what I've been able to gather, is that it's very accurate to the games. So the people in the game, the creatures, and at least from the perspective of the trailer, it's faithful to the game. I did a TikTok earlier talking about this movie, and I said it was like a breath of fresh air. And I say that because I feel like I've been waiting a long time for a fantasy movie like this. It just hit the spot in some kind of way. I'm going to the movies for a dopamine release, and this movie, as I watched it, I got that dopamine release over and over again. It was a very entertaining movie. So I think one of the reasons, some of the reasons I found it entertaining. So I thought the writing was smart. It had a lot of great humor in it. I laughed a lot. There was a lot of self-awareness about the movie, and it's just a lot of things that it's almost like the movie was making fun of itself at some points, but it did it in a smart way, and not like and not in a dumb way, I guess. It's not I guess they're not hitting it too much on the nose, but near enough to the nose where it's not annoying. Chris Pine and Michelle Rodriguez are great together. They had the entire cast just meshed together extremely well, and they all had great chemistry. And I think this is my first Hugh Grant movie, as long as he's been making movies, and as many movies as I have watched. I'm surprised that this is the first one where I actually see him in, and he was particularly entertaining. Another thing I loved about this movie was that the visuals were spectacular. The cinematography was awe-inspiring. I'll use that. I'll say that. I'll say it that way. It's a very lived-in world. It had a lot of different creatures. It had cat people. It had bird people, and they all look like they belong there, and that they've been there for a while. Everybody seems to be getting along with the different creatures. Like you and I, we walk into that world, and we're like, "Oh my God, it's a lizard person!" But for them, it's just par for the course. This is their world. This is how they live. It's not a big deal for a lizard person to be at your parole hearing. It's just part of the way this works out. And I loved how just normal it felt. It's like the movie draws you in. It's like, this is our world. All of this is normal. Just get used to it. Get over it and get used to it. We're doing this here. Okay. We're doing this right now. Just have fun. I also loved about the movie was the fight choreography. If you've seen the trailer, you've seen a little bit of it, and they have a lot more of that style of fighting. It just looks great. One of the things that you see in the trailer is you see a bunch of people attacking one person, like all at the same time, and that is as it should be. It's like when there's a group of people fighting, especially if there's a group of people fighting one person, you shouldn't be trying to fight one at a time. It should, or standing in line waiting for your turn to fight. Everybody should be surrounding that person and all fighting at the same time. And there's a lot of fun moments in the movie where with the fight choreography and how the fighting blends splendidly with the special effects. I just loved how it all worked out. And as I said, the overall story is smart. I liked it. It was a slightly complex story, but it wasn't convoluted. It all flowed together, and it made sense that the different story threads they had, the different characters and how the characters were built up. It was just overall entertaining. This was an overall entertaining movie, and I really enjoyed it. So should you see it? I think that you should. As a matter of fact, I'll put it this way. This movie is admittedly much better than Shazam, which is a movie that I talked about on the last bonus episode that came out yesterday, I think. This movie is leagues better. Like, if you had a choice and you could only see one of these movies, or if you had to save your money to watch one movie, then Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, that it should be that movie that you go see, and you can wait for Shazam to come on home video or streaming or whatever. But this movie, Dungeons and Dragons, you should go out and see. This is definitely worth the trip. And I'm going to have to reevaluate how I talk about movies, because to me, both of these movies were good. I was entertained by both of them, that I was way more entertained by Dungeons and Dragons than I was by Shazam! Fury of the Gods. So that's my short take on it, I guess. And I think I'm done. I think I've done it. Thanks for listening. Go out and enjoy some movies with your family and loved ones. Whatever you're going to be outstanding.